Have you ever woken up with that feeling that you should be doing more with your life, but your body simply refuses to move? That voice in your head screams, "Get up and do it," while another whispers, "I'll start tomorrow." And the days turn into weeks, the weeks into months, and you remain exactly where you were. But what if I told you that laziness is not your enemy? What if everything you learned about motivation and willpower is precisely what's keeping you paralyzed? The ancient samurai had a secret that modern motivational speakers don't want you to know. They understood something profound about human nature, something that can change your life in the next few hours, not in weeks or months. In this video, I'm going to reveal why you're not lazy. You're just fighting the wrong battle. When you finish watching, the way you see change will never be the same again. Your entire life, people have told you the same story. If you want something, you need discipline. You need to push harder, wake up earlier, force yourself to do things you hate. They say successful people are different from you because they have iron willpower. They can ignore their feelings and just do what needs to be done. And every time you fail to keep a promise to yourself, every time you hit the snooze button or skip the gym or waste another evening scrolling, you believe this story a little more. You think there's something broken inside you, something weak. But here's what nobody tells you. That entire story is backwards. The samurai understood something that Western culture completely missed. They knew that trying to fight against your own nature is like trying to hold water in your fists. The harder you squeeze, the faster it slips away. When you wake up and your body feels heavy, when your mind screams for just 5 more minutes, that's not weakness. That's your system trying to protect you from something it perceives as a threat. Think about it this way. Your brain is ancient. It was built thousands of years ago when life was simple and dangerous. Back then, energy was precious. Every calorie mattered. Your ancestors didn't waste energy on things that didn't immediately help them survive. Hunt, eat, find shelter, rest. That was the cycle. And your brain still works the same way today. When you tell yourself you need to start a new habit, go to the gym, learn a new skill, your brain doesn't see opportunity. It sees unnecessary energy expenditure. It sees risk. So it fights back with that heavy feeling, with excuses, with the promise that tomorrow will be different. The warriors of feudal Japan faced this same battle, but they approached it differently. They didn't try to become superhuman. They didn't pretend they could just ignore their nature. Instead, they worked with it. They understood that the human mind is like a river. You can't stop a river by standing in front of it. You redirect it. You create channels. You use its own force to take it where you want it to go. So when you feel lazy, you're not experiencing a character flaw. You're experiencing a survival mechanism that's trying to keep you safe. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem isn't you. The problem is that nobody taught you how to speak your brain's language. Nobody showed you how to make change feel safe instead of threatening. And that's exactly what kept you stuck until now. Because you've been trying to win a battle using the wrong weapons, fighting an enemy that doesn't actually exist. This understanding changes everything. And it leads us directly to what the samurai actually did about it. Now that you understand your brain isn't against you, we can talk about what actually works. The samurai had a concept they called mushin, which translates roughly to mind without mind or no mind. Sounds strange, right? But stay with me because this is where everything clicks into place. Western thinking tells you to plan everything, to think about your goals constantly, to visualize success. Make a detailed schedule. Write down your dreams. Think about the person you want to become. But here's the trap. The more you think about doing something, the bigger it becomes in your mind. The bigger it becomes, the more energy it seems to require. And the more energy it requires, the more your brain resists it. You end up in analysis paralysis, planning and thinking and preparing, but never actually moving. Mushin works the opposite way. It's about removing thought from action. The samurai trained until their sword movements became automatic. They didn't think, now I block, now I strike, now I step left. In battle, thinking gets you killed. The gap between decision and action had to disappear completely. Their bodies knew what to do before their minds could interfere. This wasn't about being thoughtless or reckless. It was about making the action so natural that resistance couldn't build up. How does this help you today? Simple. You need to make your actions smaller than your thoughts about them. Right now, changing your life feels huge because you're carrying the weight of every future action all at once. You don't just think about going to the gym today. You think about going every day for the next 6 months. You imagine the soreness, the early mornings, the discipline required. Your brain calculates the total energy cost and says absolutely not. But what if you could trick that calculation? What if the action was so small that your brain didn't even register it as a threat? This is where the samurai approach becomes practical. They didn't train by thinking about becoming master swordsmen. They picked up the sword and made one cut, then another, then another. Each cut was just a cut, not a commitment to 10,000 cuts, just one, and then the next one. The transformation happened in the space between thoughts. You can do this right now with whatever you've been avoiding. Don't think about the whole project. Don't imagine the finished version. Don't calculate how long it will take or how hard it will be. Just do the first physical movement. Not the planning of the movement, the actual movement itself. Want to write? Open the document. Don't think about writing a whole book. Open the file, that's it. Want to exercise? Put on your shoes, not the workout, just the shoes. Your brain can't build resistance against something that small. This principle works because it removes the gap where fear lives. Fear needs time to grow. It needs space between the thought and the action. When you collapse that space, when you move before the resistance can form, you slip past your own defenses. The samurai knew this. They trained until action and thought were one thing, not two. You can do the same by making your first move so tiny that your mind doesn't have time to talk you out of it. And once you're in motion, something interesting happens that we need to explore next. You felt it before. That burst of energy when you decide to change. The first day is electric. You're convinced this time is different. The second day is harder, but you push through. Then comes day 3. Suddenly everything feels heavy again. The excitement is gone. That voice returns, whispering that maybe you don't need to do this after all. By day 4 or 5, you've stopped completely, and you blame yourself for lacking discipline. But that's not what happened at all. Here's the truth about motivation that nobody explains clearly. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are chemical reactions in your body. When you decide to change, your brain releases dopamine. That's the excitement you feel. It's a reward for making a decision that might improve your survival. But your brain doesn't keep releasing dopamine for the same decision. It only rewards new decisions, unexpected victories, surprising progress. After a few days of doing the same thing, your brain stops seeing it as new. The chemical reward disappears, and without that reward, the action starts feeling like pure effort. This is why motivation-based systems always fail. They're built on a feeling that's designed to fade. The modern world sells you this idea that you need to stay motivated, that you need to keep that fire burning. So you watch inspiring videos, read quotes, listen to success stories, and it works for a day or two. Then the chemicals wear off again and you're back where you started. You're trying to run a marathon on the fuel of a sprint. The samurai faced enemies who wanted to kill them. You think they felt motivated every single day? Of course not. Some days they were tired. Some days they were afraid. Some days they probably wanted to be anywhere else. But they had something more reliable than motivation. They had ritual. They had structure that existed independently of how they felt. Their training wasn't optional based on their mood. It was simply what happened at that time of day. The feeling didn't matter. The structure carried them. You need the same thing. Not motivation, but structure that doesn't care how you feel. This sounds harsh, but it's actually liberating. You're not trying to generate some magical feeling anymore. You're just following a pattern. Wake up, do the thing. Same time, same place, same basic action. Your brain learns that this is just what happens now. Not because you're excited about it, not because you feel like it, just because this is the pattern. But here's where most people get this wrong. They create these massive routines. Morning routine with 20 steps, evening routine with 15 more, Meditation, journaling, exercise, reading, planning. It's exhausting just thinking about it, and when they miss one day, the whole structure falls apart. They feel like failures and give up completely. The samurai were smarter than this. Their rituals were simple and focused. One thing done with complete attention was worth more than 10 things done poorly. So stop trying to feel motivated. Stop waiting for the right mood. Instead, build one simple structure. One action, same time every day, so small you can't talk yourself out of it. Not because it will transform your life immediately, but because it will teach your brain that change happens through pattern, not through feeling. Once this pattern is solid, once it exists without effort, then you can add more. But not before. This foundation is everything, and it connects directly to a technique that makes the whole process almost effortless. You've built your tiny action into a daily pattern. You're moving past the need for motivation. Now we go deeper into something that sounds too simple to work, but it's devastatingly effective. The monks in Eastern temples understood that the human mind has a strange quirk. Starting something is the hardest part. Once you're in motion, continuing is much easier, but that first movement feels impossible when you're standing still. They developed practices around this insight. When a monk struggled with meditation, the teacher didn't tell him to meditate for an hour. They said, sit on the cushion for 2 minutes. That's all. Just sit. Don't worry about clearing your mind or achieving enlightenment. Just physically place yourself in the position. Most of the time, once the monk was sitting, they would stay longer. Not because they forced themselves, but because the resistance was in the starting, not the continuing. This works with everything you've been avoiding. Your brain builds massive walls around tasks because it imagines the entire task at once. Writing a book feels impossible. Writing for 2 minutes is nothing. Running 5 miles sounds terrible. Putting on running shoes and stepping outside for 2 minutes is manageable. Learning a new language seems overwhelming. Speaking 3 phrases out loud for 2 minutes is almost silly in its simplicity. But here's the secret. Once you've started, once you've physically moved past that initial resistance, your brain shifts modes. Think of it like pushing a heavy cart. Getting it moving from a standstill takes enormous force, but once it's rolling, keeping it going is much easier. Sometimes it even builds its own momentum. Your brain works the same way. The activation energy, the force needed to start, is huge, but the force needed to continue is surprisingly small, so you stop trying to find enough energy for the whole task. You only need energy for 2 minutes. Here's how you actually use this. Take whatever you've been putting off. Now reduce it to the smallest possible physical action that moves you toward it. Not thinking about it, not planning it, the actual doing. Set a timer for 2 minutes. Tell yourself you only have to do this thing for exactly 2 minutes, and then you can stop with zero guilt. This isn't a trick to make yourself do more. If you stop at 2 minutes, that's perfect. You've won. You've proven that you can start. What happens in practice is fascinating. About 70% of the time, you'll keep going past 2 minutes. Not because you're forcing yourself, but because starting was the only real barrier. The other 30% of the time, you'll stop at 2 minutes. And that's still a complete victory because you've maintained your pattern. You've kept your promise to yourself. Your brain learns that you're reliable, that you follow through. This builds something more valuable than motivation. It builds trust with yourself. Many people struggle with change because they've broken promises to themselves so many times that they don't believe their own commitments anymore. Every time you say you'll do something and then don't, you damage that internal trust. The 2-minute rule rebuilds it. You're not promising to transform your entire life. You're promising 2 minutes, and you can keep that promise. Day after day, you prove to yourself that you're someone who does what they say. That identity shift is more powerful than any burst of motivation could ever be. The monks knew this. They weren't trying to create perfect practitioners immediately. They were building people who showed up. Because someone who shows up every day, even for 2 minutes, will eventually go deeper than someone who shows up once a month for 3 hours when motivation strikes. Consistency beats intensity every single time. And now that you have this tool, we need to talk about the final piece, the mental shift that makes all of this stick permanently. Everything we've covered builds to this final insight. You understand that laziness is your brain protecting you. You know how to slip past resistance by making actions tiny. You've learned to work with patterns instead of motivation. You've used the 2-minute rule to prove you can start. Now we need to address the deepest layer, the story you tell yourself about who you are. Your brain operates on identity, not goals, not wishes, not even habits really. Identity. You act in ways that are consistent with how you see yourself. If you see yourself as someone who's lazy, you'll find ways to be lazy even when you're trying not to be. If you see yourself as someone who quits, you'll quit even when you want to continue. Your actions follow your identity, like a shadow follows your body. You can't escape it. So the question isn't how to change your actions. The question is how to change your identity. The samurai understood this completely. They didn't train to become warriors. They trained because they were warriors. The identity came first. The actions followed naturally. A warrior practices with the sword, not because they want to become skilled, but because that's what warriors do. It sounds like a subtle difference, but it changes everything. One approach is trying to become something. The other approach is acting from what you already are. You can use this same shift right now. Stop saying, "I want to be someone who exercises." Start saying, "I am someone who moves their body." Not someday. Not when you lose weight or build muscle. Right now. You're someone who moves their body. And what does someone who moves their body do? They move their body. Even if it's tiny. Even if it's just 2 minutes. The action proves the identity. The identity drives the action. They reinforce each other in a loop that builds strength over time. This works because your brain seeks consistency. When there's a gap between who you say you are and what you do, it creates psychological tension. Your brain will resolve that tension one way or another. Either you'll change your identity to match your actions, or you'll change your actions to match your identity. Most people let their actions drag their identity down. They say they're motivated, but they don't act. So eventually they accept that they're not really motivated. You're going to do the opposite. You're going to let tiny actions pull your identity up. Every time you keep your 2-minute promise, you're casting a vote for this new identity. You're gathering evidence. Your brain keeps score. It notices patterns. 10 votes for your new identity don't mean much. 100 votes start to shift things. 1,000 votes completely reshape how you see yourself. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to wait until you've transformed to claim the identity. You claim it first, then you act from it. Then the transformation happens naturally. This is the mental trick that forces your brain to act. You're not trying to become something anymore. You're not working toward a distant goal. You're simply being consistent with who you already are. And who you already are is someone who takes small actions every single day. Someone who shows up. Someone who keeps promises to themselves. That's not a future version of you. That's you right now, proven by the fact that you're still here, still listening, still considering change. The old you would have quit already, would have found an excuse, would have said this is too simple to work. But you're still here. That means something. That means the change has already begun. So you've started. You've kept your 2-minute promise for a few days, maybe even a few weeks. Your new identity is taking shape. You're someone who shows up now. But then life happens. You get sick. You travel. Work explodes. A family crisis hits. You miss a day. Then another. And that familiar feeling creeps back in. The feeling that you've failed, that you've broken the streak, that you might as well give up because the pattern is ruined. This is where most people fall back to zero. But this is also where the real warriors separated themselves from everyone else. The samurai had a concept that doesn't translate perfectly into English, but it's close to falling 7 times, standing 8. It wasn't about never falling. Everyone falls. The greatest swordsman in Japan fell. The most disciplined monk missed meditations. The most dedicated student had days where nothing went right. The difference wasn't in the falling. It was in what happened next. Did they treat the fall as evidence of failure, or as just another part of the path? Here's what nobody tells you about building a new life. It's not a straight line. You will miss days. You will have setbacks. You will face situations where keeping your pattern feels impossible. And in those moments, your brain will try to use it as proof that you're still the old you. It will say, "See, you're lazy after all. You couldn't even keep this one simple thing going." This voice is a trap. It's trying to protect you from the discomfort of change by giving you an excuse to return to what's familiar. But you have a choice in that moment. You can agree with that voice and quit, or you can treat the missed day as completely neutral information. Not good, not bad. Just data. You missed a day. Okay. What does someone with your identity do after missing a day? They don't spiral. They don't waste energy on guilt. They simply return. The next possible moment, they do their 2 minutes. No drama, no stories about failure. Just back to the pattern. This mindset is everything. Your brain is watching to see how you handle disruption. If you handle it by quitting, by deciding the whole thing was pointless, you're teaching yourself that you're fragile, that you need perfect conditions to succeed, that any deviation from the plan means total collapse. But if you handle it by calmly returning, by treating the miss as irrelevant to your identity, you're teaching yourself something much more powerful. You're teaching yourself that you're resilient, that external circumstances don't define you, that your identity isn't dependent on a perfect streak. The warriors knew that battle is chaos. Plans fall apart, strategies fail, weapons break. In those moments, the fighters who survived weren't the ones who never made mistakes. They were the ones who recovered fastest, who didn't freeze when things went wrong, who adapted and kept moving. Your life is the same. Things will go wrong. You will face chaos. The question is whether that chaos stops you or just slows you down temporarily. Here's a practical way to build this resilience. Create what you might call a comeback protocol. Decide right now, before you miss a day, exactly what you'll do when it happens. Not if it happens. When. Write it down if that helps. When I miss my 2 minutes, I will do them the very next day at the same time. No guilt, no extended break. Just return. Having this decision made in advance removes the negotiation. Your brain can't talk you into a 3-day break because the protocol is already set. Some people find it helpful to track their pattern visually, not to create pressure, but to see the reality clearly. Mark each day you complete your 2 minutes. When you miss a day, mark that too. Then look at the overall pattern over weeks and months. You'll see that missing 1 day, or even 3 days, barely shows up in the larger picture. What matters is the overall direction. Are you showing up more than you're not? Are the gaps getting smaller over time? That's success. Perfect is not the goal. Consistent direction is the goal. Think about water cutting through stone. Water doesn't cut through stone by being perfect. It cuts through stone by returning again and again and again. Some drops miss. Some days there's less water. Some seasons the stream runs dry. But it comes back. And over time, even the hardest stone yields. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be like water. Persistent, patient, always returning. This is the final piece that most people miss. They think change requires perfection. They think one mistake means starting over. They think their streak is their success. But the streak is just a tool. Your identity is the real success. And your identity isn't built by never falling. It's built by always standing back up. The samurai who became legends weren't the ones who never got knocked down. They were the ones who stood up one more time than they fell. You can do the same. You already have. And now you know that no matter what happens, no matter how many times you stumble, you're someone who always returns to the path. That's not something you're trying to become. That's something you already are. Proven by the fact that you're here right now, ready to start again or keep going. The change isn't coming. The change is already here.